I started coding really young. I grew up in the heart of the Silicon Valley in San Jose, California. And I was lucky enough to go to a school that taught computer science to elementary school students. So I was in third grade. I was 8 years old, and I had this class called Logo. And that was my first exposure to computer science, to computer programming languages. And Logo was a language specifically for kids where you had a turtle and you would give the turtle commands to tell it what to do. So the turtle could build a house or it could create a snowflake. It was very much my first exposure to what is programming. And programming is really just a list of instructions you give to a computer so that it can do some sort of action or provide some sort of service.
Hello, I'm John Brink, and we are podcasting on the Brink from downtown Prince George, British Columbia, Canada. And for all those guests watching us from around the world, where is Prince George, Canada? Well, it's about 500 miles, or for our European friends, about 800 kilometers north of Vancouver, which puts us in the center of British Columbia. Beautiful province, lots of forests, lots of animals, wild animals. It's an absolute beautiful area. If you ever consider going to Canada, go to British Columbia, and then as you see the lower coast area, also go to the north, and Prince George is the place to go, and you'll see nature at its best. Today, a very special podcast. I have a guest. Her name is Denzil Eden, and Denzil is an amazing individual with an amazing background, and studied software, Microsoft issues, was at MIT, Harvard background, and is a founder and an entrepreneur extraordinaire, and especially in the field of software and artificial intelligence, the new world, and Denzil is going to share that with us during our podcast. Denzil, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So you are located in where again?
Brooklyn, New York.
Brooklyn, New York. And so I look behind you and you have an amazing library.
I do, yeah. It's a collection from when I was a kid to now, and my partner's books as well.
So what I found interesting about you is that I was going to say I'm an old guy. No, I'm not an old guy. Well, I am compared to you, likely, is that I'm going to be 84 in November. And
wow.
I was born in 1940 in Northern Holland. And I grew up during a period when everything was by hand and everything, we had calculators, minus plus and divide this and divide that, and saying, my God, this is technology. And so then, as we went further and taking fast tracking forward to today, I'm probably a bit of an exception to a lot of people in my age group. I still know friends, and I say this respectfully, that don't even do email. And I said, are you kidding me? Respectfully. And so I'm doing a lot of that, obviously, and I have an iPad and all that technology and computers and all the other kinds of things, because I wouldn't know what to do without it. I'm still from the time that, oh my God, we got iPhones and they look like a shoe about this big, and and then obviously the beginning of Apple and all those kind of things. And the world changed in terms of computers, software, and then Microsoft, Apple, and all the other technology and different platforms came in, social media. So for all intents and purposes, already in the last number of years, we are in a new world in regards to computer technology, software, and how the world interacts. And this is, again, is a perfect example of what we are doing today. We are podcasting on virtually from the one side of Canada, the west, to Brooklyn, New York on the other side. And that is not out of the ordinary. We have podcasted where we had one person from Peru, another one out of Europe, and then me on the other side. And all of that now is possible. And at the same time, when we do this, you and me sitting here for the next hour and exchanging ideas and learning a lot from this discussion, we already know that tens of thousands of people are watching us.
It's
I find
crazy. The
it,
world is smaller than ever.
and it is just beginning in my mind, and I'm sure you are one of the specialists in particular in that, and you will share that with us. What I found interesting about you in particular, you were young when you first got an interest in computers, software, and coding in particular. Now, before we start the discussion, as I understand coding, is working with software and changing it around and manipulating in a positive way what you can do with software and as it evolves. Can you share with us what it is?
Yeah, so I started coding really young. I grew up in the heart of the Silicon Valley in San Jose, California. And I was lucky enough to go to a school that taught computer science to elementary school students. So I was in third grade. I was 8 years old, and I had this class called Logo. And that was my first exposure to computer science, to computer programming languages. And Logo was a language specifically for kids where you had a turtle and you would give the turtle commands to tell it what to do. So the turtle could build a house or it could create a snowflake. It was very much my first exposure to what is programming. And programming is really just a list of instructions you give to a computer so that it can do some sort of action or provide some sort of service. And that is what like coding is at a high level as well. And that is exactly how software works. It has a recipe, or it has a set of instructions that tells how the software is going to work. And then you as the user interact with the software and get the results that you want.
And we could not imagine today, and taking this all for granted, somebody like myself that is not understands all the coding and how you go about doing what you're doing, but most companies and most individuals in some form or fashion are working on platforms or in their companies or in their environment. Computers and computer technology plays a major role.
Definitely. And software has changed so much over just the last 30 years. And then all of this generative AI work has just also been extremely transformative. AI is changing software faster than ever. And I think software 10 years from now or 15 years from now will look completely differently from what we use today.
Now, I just want to make sure that our guest watching us, AI is artificial intelligence. It is a lot in the news now, and it is feared by a lot of people that are afraid it will change the world. There are even speculations that some people believe that it potentially could take over what we are doing and make decisions about all the things around us, and so help us to understand it. And if I look from a more positive perspective, and as a layperson, I'm looking at artificial intelligence as the genie is out of the box, so it doesn't go back in, and it now becomes a question of what will it look like and how can we incorporate it in our day-to-day environment. And most people already do to a certain extent. If I get a bio in from somebody, then it likely is produced under AI or writing books. In a lot of cases, it's the editing part is being done by AI, and all of those things. It becomes more and more artificial intelligence as we speak. It's just at the beginning.
Yeah. I'm happy to start at the beginning. So, I really think artificial intelligence is a very broad term. It's an umbrella that covers a lot of different ways that technology thinks. And the movies like Terminator that like put a lot of fear around artificial intelligence, they're really this concept of artificial general intelligence. It's where a computer can think on its own and can think for itself. We are not at that point today, and we are nowhere near that point. Artificial general intelligence is a long way off, and I don't even think really even the most cutting edge researchers today know what it will take to get there. But in terms of what we do have today, artificial intelligence is just a tool. It is just a tool that will transform every industry that is out there today, from farming to writing to creating art. Artificial intelligence is very much just a tool. It's not something anyone out there should be scared of. And I think in general, it's going to improve the quality of life for everyone out there. And as you reference, the best tools right now that use AI are generative artificial intelligence. So generative AI is this concept of creating something new using past data. So AI tools that use generative AI, they have all this data that is writing data or art data, and they're able to create new works of art or new works of writing based off of that data. And so ChatGPT is like the biggest writing tool that's out there. Midjourney is one of the best art tools that are out there. And there's so many more. There's a generative AI tool for pretty much every hobby or professional pursuit that is currently that you can think of. And so for everyone who's listening, who's curious about learning more about how to use AI, I would really recommend developing your AI literacy, which doesn't mean you have to understand how AI works. It just means that you need to understand how to use an AI tool. And so if you're passionate about cooking, there is an AI cooking tool out there. If you're passionate about writing, then you should try ChatGPT and try to improve your writing while using ChatGPT, or at least try to see how it works and how you can use it to empower yourself. And so whatever your hobbies are, use that to figure out how to be a better AI tool user.
So I looked kind of, before our interview, kind of, and I wanted to kind of understand coding because I was not overly familiar with it. And so, hence that's what I did. And then at the same time, obviously AI, I looked at that, and there were three areas in particular that it pointed out as it was personalized, was one, I believe, and then productive and proactive, and the three main areas in particular.
Yeah, so I believe that AI has three main pillars, as you said. And so the first one is predictive. The way that AI works is that it uses past data to predict future outcomes. And so, as we say, like ChatGPT or Midjourney, it uses past works of art or past works of writing to create a new output, to predict something new. And then the second thing about AI is that it can be proactive based off these predicted recommendations, predicted outcomes that it creates. It can proactively complete an outcome. It can actually proactively do something. And then personalized is really AI can understand your personal data, your personal preferences, and then pick an outcome that is what you would pick. And so it can be AI tools today can provide very personalized recommendations to who you are versus to who I am. And that is something that's really magical about AI.
So again, AI relatively, it probably already the concept or the thought about it was already there for a long time, but it's still relatively new to the masses and being talked about it a lot, and the public in general is hungry for understanding it, and so, but there are a number of things about it. Is people are talking about guardrails potentially limiting how far it can go. I'm not exactly sure how productive that would be, unless it goes too far in directions that it shouldn't. But on the other hand, as I said earlier, it's now part of life here. The genie is out of the bottle. It will never go back, and it will have a dramatic impact on all the things that we already know about software, and it will go deeper and further into our daily interaction that we have, either in companies that we run and all the other things.
Definitely. I think AI is going to transform every industry that is out there today. But at the end of the day, AI is just a tool. I really think for the mass layperson, you don't have to understand how AI works because that's constantly changing as well. All you need to understand is how to use an AI tool. So it's really important for folks today to work on their AI literacy, to play around with AI tools that exist today and understand how to use them, how to prompt them. That's why prompt engineering has become such a big thing today, because I think AI over the next 5 and 10 years is continuing to blow up. It's going to be in every industry, in every job, in every personal thing too. It's going to affect your personal life as well as your professional life. So the earlier you can get familiar with it, the better.
So that in being said, Denzil, is that help us and our guests that are watching us from around the world. How do we start? So I'm sitting there on Google, and what do I do? Put in that AI. Tell me what is AI. Is that how we
Yeah, I
start?
mean, I think the best way to get started with developing your AI literacy is to take something you're passionate about, a hobby. So if you are a writer, then you should look up AI writing tools in like a Google search bar or Bing search bar, and ChatGPT will probably be the first thing that comes up. So then you should start playing around with ChatGPT. If you like to do art, then you should look up AI art tools, and I bet Midjourney will be the first tool that comes up. But it's really like taking something that you're passionate about, your hobbies, your interests, and then finding the AI equivalent tool for that. Because I feel like the best way to learn anything new is by exploring through something you're passionate about.
Yeah, and that could be, I want to become a painter or a writer of books or articles, or I want to know more about building houses or whatever you want to do. There will be a tool for it on AI. Now, the other thing that I've noticed more and more, you can sign up a membership on companies that particularly focus on AI. On the other hand, Google, that has been such a powerful search engine, is more and more expanding in the direction of AI, meaning that the questions you ask Google become more elaborate as you ask for information.
Yes, exactly. So Google is also like trying to integrate these AI tools into every service that they provide. So search is one of their biggest money making services. And so they're trying to provide more like AI generated responses that are personalized to you, the user who's searching, and also like personalized to the questions you're asking. So definitely every company is trying to figure out how to integrate these AI services to provide value to the user.
So you became, with the skill sets that you had developed very early in life, you became a software engineer and product manager, and then you founded a new company that is based on the knowledge that you had developed. What did that look like, and how did you start it? How did you identify the need, and what did you kind of develop as a niche that you saw was available to you to turn it into a company?
Yeah, great question. So it was a very long journey. I started computer science. I didn't think being a founder was for me, and so I like stayed away from that. Went to big tech, worked at Microsoft. But I was always in the enterprise productivity space. So enterprise productivity is a specific software type of business where you're building tools to make people more productive at work. And so that was what I was doing at Microsoft. It was a space that I was always very passionate about, but I wasn't sure if technology was really the industry where I wanted to stay. So I tried out a bunch of other careers. I went to business school. And while I was at business school, I really found myself coming back to tech over and over again. And I was also just finding myself very much overwhelmed with everything that was going on in my life, both professionally and personally. And I just knew that everything that I was doing could be easily done with technology. The technology could easily automate a lot of the daily administrative work that I was doing. And I was frustrated that there wasn't a tool that could just do it for me. And so I actually started building Smarty, my startup, for myself. I wanted to just have a way to automate all the administrative work in my life. And so I built Smarty. The first version was a chatbot. So I would try to chat it, things that I had to do, and then Smarty would try to get it done for me. And that's how I started the business. I pitched it to an investor. They did not invest in me, but they gave me a lot of really great feedback, and I kept iterating from there. And that allowed me to grow Smarty into what it is today, which is just an AI powered executive assistant. You can type in conversational commands to Smarty, and Smarty will automate different administrative work that you would delegate to an executive assistant. So scheduling links, email management, notes management, contact management. We've created conversational commands for all of that.
So, what is the website, or how do you become a member of Smarties?
Yeah, so you can go to smarty.ai. It's a web app. And so you can use it on Chrome, Safari, any web browser. And right now, we just are on top of G Suite. So you can log in with multiple Google accounts and manage 3 or 4 accounts in one universal inbox.
Okay, and then is there a fee you pay for that membership? How does that work?
Yeah, there's a free trial, and then it's $10 a month.
Oh, that's very cheap, and
Yeah, our
you know,
competitors.
and that's my initial reaction. So
Yeah, we're early, so we're an early company. So our competitors actually charge a lot more than we do, but we are just trying to get a loyal base of early users as we continue making the product better and better.
so Smarties.ai, or is Smarties.ai,
TY.
SmartyTY.ai will bring you to the site, and then from there on in, hey, that's harmless, guys. You get a trial. At least you can sort it out, and it's certainly something that I'm going to do next week when when I'm back into my office doing the normal things, just to check it out, because it makes a lot of sense to me. So that made you then all the things that you didn't want to do. Now all of a sudden you're an entrepreneur, you are a founder of a company. So that meant you had to go to the banks, and you had to do what I've been doing for the last 60 years, try to convince them to lend you money, and write a business plan and convince them, and saying, what are you, can you explain that to me again? That kind of a thing. And saying,
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
and so you went through all of that and you were successful.
I was. We raised 2.5 million, which is I'm so grateful for that. We did it over 3 years, and so it took a long time. I think for anyone who has a business idea and is trying to pitch to venture capital, the biggest learning that I've had is that you can't take no's personally, and you just have to keep going. You have to believe in your why and why you're doing this, and just be resilient.
Yeah, so my story is that was in 1975. I wanted to start a new lumber company. I needed $25,000. I wrote a business plan. I went to 12 banks. They all turned me down. And then I focused on 2 of the last ones. I went down there probably 12 times, making sure that I didn't get them all upset, asked for ideas. What can I do? How about that? What changes do you want me to make? Business plan, gradually, more and more. And then after the 12th time I went down there, and the fellow that was looking at my business plan said, okay, let me talk to the manager. He's about 4 cubicles away. And so I was sitting there waiting, and I heard all the way from 4 cubicles over, give him the money, give him the money. And so the case is that what I say is persistence, don't give up, stay the course. I do a lot of presenting to people that aspire to go entrepreneurship and all the other kind of things. And so I did a presentation the other day, and the fellow that asked for the question, saying, well, he doesn't believe there are any more opportunities. I said, why? Well, he said he had a business plan. He went to the bank and they turned him down. I said, okay, and then what happened? Well, he said, nothing, because there's no more opportunity. I said, wrong. So then I told him mine. I went 12 times, and I knew that gradually, bit by bit, made the change, stayed the course, and I was successful. And that opportunity, and so your advice that you just gave, very much so the same as me.
Definitely. And that resonates with me too, because my first investor, I pitched them in 2018. They said no. I kept sending updates. I kept giving them new information whenever I had any sort of progress. And finally, they were my first check-in in 2020. And so it just takes time and persistence, and you have to stay the course, exactly like you said.
And you have to believe in it, because if you don't believe in it, why would
No
they?
one else. Yes.
So, or anybody else. So and again, the other one, it's a niche, very timely. But the other advantage that I believe you had, Denzil, is that you already from very, very young age, when you were 8 years old, luckily being where you were located and having the opportunity where the school that you were trained your earlier period with had already computer technology ideas involved, which then molded you in terms of getting very early access to what was happening, and it became something that interested you immensely of to what it could do. But that laid the foundation as to where you were going, and likely still is the foundation that makes you go forward much further from here on in. But it's always that foundation, and then entrepreneurship, and then obviously your involvement with MIT and Harvard and Microsoft and all the other kind of things have all been part of your foundation.
I definitely agree. I was very lucky to have that computer science class so young in life. And I'm always surprised at how many schools still don't teach computer science at a young age. I honestly believe a lot of the AI literacy stuff that we talked about, that could be taught to elementary school students or even younger. And same with entrepreneurship. I think most schools should teach entrepreneurship. It teaches you so many life skills. And I had to learn it on this journey of my own, but I think a lot of this could have been taught at a very, very young age. And so I 100% agree that I was very lucky, and I wish I could encourage more schools to teach both computer science, AI now, and entrepreneurship.
I agree with you 100%. The other part that I found, and this was much earlier, and because I was born in 1940, so I went to school. I was not an academic success. I failed grade 3 and I failed grade 7 3 times. And then they said, "What are we going to do with this guy?" And they said, "Well." My parents were beautiful people. Some people said, well, maybe send him to the school of mentally challenged people. So they said, no, we're going to do that. So we want to have him learn a trade. And so my dad worked in lumber, and my grandfather was a master carpenter. He said, well, how about sending him to a furniture factory? So that's what he did. At 13 years old, I went to a furniture factory. And then, from there on in, I developed the love for lumber and fiber and all the other things that served me well. And then, and then the other thing that I did is I was always a good writer, and I was very good at numbers, and even then already. And so I would go to listen to successful entrepreneurs that were speaking all over the place, and I wanted to understand what made them click. And so that's what I did. And then it was much later, we were liberated by the Canadian Army in the Second World War, April the 12th, 1945. And I was so impressed by the Canadian Army that liberated us that I always knew that I would go to the land of my heroes, and I did. And when I was 23, and then I always had the feeling that I somehow failed. It didn't overly preoccupy me, but a lot of people here already, I was successful in the businesses that I built, and they all said, "Oh, you're so successful," and I didn't feel that way. And it was not until I went to a bookstore here. I was already here for 32 years, even in Prince George in Canada. I was already 57 years old. And I picked up a book in the store, and the book's title was Driven to Distraction, written by Dr. Halliwell. And I opened the book, I still don't know why, and it was a book about ADHD. And I said, oh my God, that's me. And so I was 57 then, 1997. And I still have the book, and I still wrote in it in Dutch because I was ashamed of it at the time. Since the time I found out a lot more about it, and I believe now it's a superpower. And a lot of times people say to me, how do you do all the stuff that you do? I'm an author. I've written 4 books. I'm working on 2 other ones. I obviously am a podcaster. I'm a speaker and have 10 companies that are quite successful. Say, how do you do it all? I say, ADHD. Otherwise, I couldn't do it. Anyway,
That's so inspiring.
Say again.
Oh, I said that's so inspiring, and I'm going to find the book. But I really think it's a lesson that traditional institutional education doesn't tell you anything. Everyone is so unique.
Absolutely. And so I felt so strongly about it, Denzil, that once I got to know more about it, and looking at Google and searching about it, that I became convinced it's a superpower. And it's Dr. Halliwell, and and he wrote the book in 1993. I bought the book in 1997, so the interesting part about him is that you are podcast number 239 on the Brink. I interviewed Dr. Halliwell on 2003. Can you believe it? On my podcast. And there he is. You see the picture?
Yeah.
Dr. Halliwell. And so, and by then, I already knew, and I said to her, initially I looked at Google, and when I first checked it out, they said about 8% of the population affected by, or benefiting from, in my opinion, ADHD. Then I found that it was much higher than that. And so my discussion with Dr. Halliwell, I said, I believe it is 20% or more. He said, John, I disagree. I believe it is 25% or more. I agree with him. And then the other part that I said to him, my experience had been that of the successful, and the operative here is successful entrepreneurs or CEOs, at least I said 50% of them are ADHD. He said, no, John, at least 75%. I agree with him. So it is a very interesting podcast. So the amazing thing about it is, for me, is that it has served me well. I can do a whole lot of things. I'm writing a book right now that you may find interesting. Is that it's coming out in July, and it's a book. This is the book, Living Young, Dying Old. It's a picture of me, actually. I'm also a bodybuilder.
Really?
Yeah, the oldest professional bodybuilder in North America, certainly in Canada. So yeah, and so the book is not about age. That's just the number. It's the quality of life that counts.
Yeah.
So that one will come out in July. So
I'm excited to check out the book and the episode with Dr. Halliwell, because I do believe that. I do believe a large percentage of executives do have ADHD and have created coping mechanisms, and that for attention and distraction. And I think that is their superpower. It is what allows them to manage all of their time, all of these interests and passions.
And the other part about it, Denzil, that I have found is that with all due respect to my peers, I'm very interactive in a lot of areas where I sit on boards and all of these other things that I've been around, senior engineer or executives of all kinds of different levels. And so what I usually find, they've been taught respectfully to manage in a certain box. I don't do that. I always kind of look on the outside of it and say, why are we doing it this way? Why can we not do it this way? And sometimes I make them feel uncomfortable because I go out to the outer areas, but it has served me well, still does today as we speak.
That is the superpower of any entrepreneur, being able to think outside of the box, be untraditional in your methodology.
Exactly. And then the same, that you were saying earlier. So then I felt I had to write a book about it. Let me show you the first book that I did. is against all odds. And that's an autobiography. It took me 80 years to think about it, 80 years to live it, 20 years to think about it, 2 years to write it. And as you well know, I believe you are also an author, and you write a lot. And, so that, the writing books is not easy. And so, and especially not when you do an autobiography. So I cannot write it and then say 6 months later, I don't like it, I'll do another one. No, John, one chance at an autobiography. So I did it, has been quite successful. And then I felt so strongly about the stigma around ADHD. I felt I had to write a book about that. So I did. I wrote this one, ADHD Unlocked. And very popular, actually. You can pick it up anywhere, go either backwards or forward. You can read it, typical for ADHD. And then the interesting part about this book is the person that wrote the foreword was Tracy Lotz. She's a medical doctor and an emergency surgeon, ADHD. And, so... And so that was interesting. And then the other part that I did on my writing journey is that I do a lot of presenting to young people in particular. And so as they are in colleges or universities, whatever, and I usually say to them respectfully, what do you plan to do as a career? Most of the time say, I don't know. I say, check it out, You want to be a truck driver? Talk to a truck driver. They love to talk to you about saying, I want to be a truck driver. Or you want to be a builder? Talk to somebody that does building. You want to be an architect? Talk to somebody who's an architect. They will love to talk to you. Or a doctor or a lawyer or an entrepreneur or a CEO. They all like to have people that say, I'm interested in knowing what you're doing. And so that's usually what I tell them. And then... the other thing that I saw it on a U.S. channel, I believe, 6 months, 8 months, I forget now when it was, and they said that 75% of the people that work do not like their jobs.
Yeah,
and probably 70% of the 75% are looking for another job. And so what I say to people is, and I feel that way, and I felt I had to write a book about it. So it's finding your passion, living the dream. And so you did, I did. And so every day, even now at nearly 84, I get up at 5:30 in the morning, and I always think I'm late. I always make my bed, and every day to me, what is important in terms of a foundation is attitude, passion, work ethic. And I work harder than anybody else, and what will follow is success.
That's amazing. I'm actually very curious, what is your daily routine like in order to be able to balance everything that you do?
It's usually, all the companies, and then I'm podcasting, I'm writing books. So what I usually do is I usually get up at 5:30, and then I'm very health oriented and gym oriented. So then I usually have 3 eggs and an avocado. Then I go to work, and then my day is, I'm not trying to be important, but it's usually very busy from meetings to meetings, crisis or whatever is going on in all the companies. And I've learned to work with that. I'm usually not a yellow screamer. I don't do that. And we manage things. And then that 3 days a week I go to the gym, usually at 11 o'clock. I work with the trainer. I'm getting ready for competing again in the Arnolds in 2025, and I'm 85. And I love that because it gives me a reason to go to the gym. And I love going to the gym, and I'm not tittle-toddling around or socializing. I'm there to work, and I work hard when I'm there. And so I do that, and then I usually have a protein shake when I'm there before I leave, so that's my lunch. Then I have a protein drink mid-afternoon, and then I have a meal usually in the evenings. I mix it up between salads and and having some other kind of a meal, but usually a lot of salads. So a lot of my diet is plant-based. I don't drink, I don't smoke, obviously. And the other part that's very important for me is to get sleep. 7, 8, 9 hours a night is very important. Now, the other part that I do is that usually on Friday afternoons, like tomorrow, at 1 o'clock, I go to Victoria, and you're familiar likely with Victoria in British Columbia. It's on Vancouver Island. We have a place there, so my wife is in Victoria in North Saanich, so I go there Friday afternoon and then stay there over the weekend. I have an office in our house there. I do stuff just to kind of catch up for the week, work on my books. I'm working on another 2 books that I'm doing, and a few other projects. And then we have horses. We both ride English dressage. And then, and then on Monday morning, 11 o'clock, I take the flight back to Prince George. Then I'm here at noon. And so then I work the rest of the week, usually 12, 14 hours a day.
Wow, that's intense. Do you do a podcast every day?
Pretty much, yeah. I think we do 12 to 15 podcasts a month, and where I'm hosting, and then I'm a guest usually on 6 to 8 other podcasts. So I would say, yeah, probably at least that, yeah, something like that, yeah. I love
Do
it.
you, yeah, this is fun. Do you have an executive assistant?
Yeah, I have a number of people in my companies that executive assistant, and then here, I work with both Scott, you had contact with likely, and then with Andrew is the technical guy, so they are part of our support team.
That's really cool. Something that I've been trying recently is I've been trying to have themes to my days. So to have a day that is mostly focused on content writing, a day that is focused mostly on coding, a day that is focused on podcasting. Have you ever done anything like that?
Where I structured a day, yeah. So for me, being ADHD, it's kind of if I would say, Denzil, go with me. For the day, let's first go to my office. You will look at my office and say, "Oh my God, how can you find anything?" Because it stacks up, David, all over the place. And so then from there on in, there's probably a meeting of some sort, and then some crises happen. So it's difficult sometimes for me to have structure to it, but it's always been that way. And so I don't easily get panicky or anything like that. It all kind of falls together, and then I have to rush because I got another podcast here, and then another one there, and then this and that, and so it's all part of life. I love it.
Yeah, it's all part of life.
Yeah.
What's your favorite productivity hack then?
Say again.
What's your favorite productivity hack or tool or trick?
I like to be around horses. That is one of the things that I love to do. I love going to the gym, especially training hard. And so that's mainly what I do. And then writing, obviously. And, so I'm not I don't play golf. And, I don't have the patience for it, I don't think. And so, but that's pretty much what I do.
That's amazing.
And I like speaking and interacting with young people. The other part that I do is very important to me. I remember the war years. I was there when the war in Holland. I remember still from the time that I was 3.5, 4 years old, hundreds of bombers in the air that were Allied bombers that were bombing Germany, and we lived in the northeastern part of Holland, close to the border with Germany. So I remember that part, and then the war was a challenge. And my dad was drafted into the Dutch army early in April. My mother was pregnant with me then, and then the last they heard from him, he was caught in Rotterdam when it was bombed and thousands of people died. For 5 years they wouldn't know if he survived or not. And and then I had a sister 1 year older, brother 2 years older. And then 1944-45 was the hunger winter. And I still, even now, still remember the sound of the bombers, hundreds of bombers in the air. And we would go outside in the evenings and be, because he felt safer outside than inside. And as we watched in the distance, we could see the cities burning in the distance. The sky would be red, where Kiel, Bremen, Hamburg, and those areas, northern part of Germany, close to our border. And then the other part that we would do is, every the winter 1944-45 was the hunger winter. They had cut off all the food to our region. A lot of young people died, older people, vulnerable people died. And then, at the same time, it was the coldest one on record. And I can still feel the hunger, even now, still from then. And, and then the cold, I still can feel that part. And so every morning, my brother, my sister, and myself, we would go out with gunny sacks into the railroad yard and pick up anything burnable or edible. And the reason that we did is because the Germans would kick us in the butt, but he wouldn't shoot us, and we'd be back the following day. So those things. And then obviously during the liberation, we saw much more than we should have seen, and as a result, I was affected by PTSD. Still have that today. Got counseling for the inner child actually in my 50s. Very emotional, So the reason that all of that is important, because with all due respect, some people, in with respect, sometimes believe that if you have war, after the war is over, everything goes back to normal. It simply doesn't. It may take not only a generation, it could take several generations. And so I fly around a lot now in Canada and commercially, and do a lot of business in the States. And if I fly around commercially, I always sit by the window and I look outside. I say, it's paradise. We are so lucky and so fortunate. We live in paradise, both in North America, in the U.S., as well as in Canada. And some people believe that in the democratic system is not perfect. I know that, but I was born under a dictatorship where Hitler, tried to destroy a lot of the things that we had in Europe, and obviously our families suffered through it. We saw people being dragged out of their houses, never to come back. So we have seen the bad parts of it. And for anybody that has, democratic system is not perfect, but it's better than the alternative. And for those people that are not sure about it, look at Russia, look at North Korea, look at China, look at Venezuela, look at Cuba, and I can go on and on and on.
Definitely. I mean, that must have been such a transformative but also traumatic experience so young in life.
Yeah, it certainly is something that will stay with you. And obviously, seeing it, that the result of war is that it should be avoided at all costs. And we see now the Ukraine, the Middle East, and unfortunately, there have always been wars a lot of times. And the United States is being looked at a lot of times as the example of the democratic system. About 250 years ago, when they developed the Constitution of the United States and became the experiment called the democratic system, it became the example for the free world. And and looking at the Constitution of the United States, starting with the three words, "We the people," and so it became the example. And sometimes I think now that I'm not sure that people fully appreciate how precious it is in the last 250 years, where it became the leadership of the world, and how easily it can be, how vulnerable it is, and how easily it can be destroyed.
No, I think about that a lot, how vulnerable it is and how little it takes for a democratic government to turn into a dictatorship. And so it's something that I am definitely worried about often.
Yeah, and I hope a lot of other people do the same. And the same applies to Canada is a beautiful country, and our political system is boring. And then I look across the border, I watch CNN, and I say, "Oh my God," you know. So but I'm being respectful, and but I hope and I believe at the end that people will realize that what they have, not perfect, but better than the alternative.
Yeah. But it's really important for people to be educated around how easily things can change. And actually, it's interesting that you brought it up because I recently read this book, 30 Days to Power, and it was about Hitler's rise and how quickly it happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have the
No,
book. I want to show it.
yeah,
Highly would recommend everyone read it because it's so
yeah,
easy for a
and
democracy.
as you said, how quickly it happened under the right circumstances, and listening to what he said, he told them exactly what he would do.
Yes,
And the
it's
people just
crazy.
stood there. Is I forget now the one, but where they said this one fellow's name, I forget his name now. He said initially they went after the communists, and they took him away and tried to kill them. And I said nothing because I was not a communist. The next one,
Yeah.
they went after the socialists, and I stood by and said nothing because I was not a socialist. And now they're knocking on my door, and there's nobody to defend me. And that's how it
Yeah,
goes.
that's how it happens. And that's why it's so important for people to study history and to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Exactly. So in my way, I'm vocal about it because I'm one of the few girls, respectfully, that was
Just live
there.
through it.
I lived through it. And I saw the results of it on the families and the effect it had on them. Yeah. So what we
It's
have
nice,
is precious.
very precious. We should always be grateful. And then it's very nice to see that you've built such a beautiful life for yourself.
I love it. And so tomorrow, when I'm flying around again across the British Columbia, and as I approach, but even here, I look outside and I say, it's paradise. I do that every time, and the same as we do a lot of business in the United States, and if I fly across there, I say the same, how fortunate we are. But with
Peace and
that
freedom.
go, yeah, but with that go, if we want to protect freedom in the world, because we are all stakeholders, and so I see the Ukraine, they're not only fighting their war, they're fighting our war for freedom, and a lot of times that's happening, and we should understand that. I'm not saying that we don't, but at least in my mind, that is important. The blood they shed is for
Okay.
us.
I agree.
Denzil, it was a pleasure. We can go on for another hour, so. I really, really enjoyed having you on my podcast. And I'm going to send you my books.
Please. I mean, that's really nice. I was going to buy them, so I'm
No,
excited to read them.
I'm gonna send them to you. Scott will make sure that he gets your address, and then we'll send them to you. And again, it was a pleasure and a privilege to have you on my podcast.
It was my pleasure and privilege, and honestly, I was so inspired by your story. Like I hope to adopt your routine into my own life and your work ethic as well. I'm very, very inspired.
Let's stay in touch, Denzil.
Definitely. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, you take care now. Bye bye.
Bye.